قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون.
الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولي الصالحين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم على عبدك ورسولك محمد وآله وصحبه ومن دعا بدعوته واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد. All praises are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and surely Allah is the friend and protector of the righteous. And I bear witness that Allah is one and has no partners, that Muhammad the son of Abdullah is his servant and his last messenger. And may Allah always and constantly send peace and blessings to Muhammad, to his family, to his companions, to all those who call to his way and establish his sunnah to the day of judgment. As to what follows, I begin by cautioning myself and you to have taqwa, al-khawf wal-raja', to fear Allah and to hope in the mercy of Allah. And this taqwa develops a type of wiqaya, a shield around the believer that protects him or her in all circumstances, not only in the masjid but outside of the masjid. Taqwa is that element, that consciousness of Allah in the mind and in the state of the believer, where he is aware of the presence of Allah Azza wa Jal when he is around the non-Muslims, when he is at school, when he is on his job. He still remembers that there is one who is closer to him than his jugular vein. And so I caution myself and you with this. And I ask Allah to have mercy on you, to have mercy on your families, to have mercy on all of the Muslims in these trying times that we are going through. No doubt Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed us to be one of the largest nations on earth, to be growing at unprecedented rates, that we would have a majority of young people within our nation. We would also have great natural resources under our countries, strategic positions. We are blessed to have countries in parts of the world where the economy has the potential to still grow in a natural way. But something on the inside of the Muslim, something on the inside needs to be dealt with, and Muslims are crying for change all around the planet. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us clearly, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change that which is in themselves. Something on the inside needs to be changed. We need to now look at our religion as not just rituals. It's not just something that you do. Salat is not just something that we do at the time when it comes in. It is a protection. Allah Azza wa Jal has told us, Inna salata tanha an al-fahsha wal-munkar, that salat will protect us from evil and corruption. And when corruption is stalking the land, and corruption is leading to people dying of disease, dying of alcohol, dying of drug addiction, then the salat is a protection. And so in that salat there is something which will guide us and help us in the world to make the decisions and to live the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to live. Similarly with fasting, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Allah told us that fasting, the essence of fasting is taqwa. It's the consciousness of Allah. It's not just a fast in order to make the time, but there's something that comes out of the imsak. Something comes out of the abstinence that gives the individual a consciousness of his Creator. And so something deeper. We need to go through the surface and not just be Muslims on the outside, but go to the internal aspects of Islam to look within ourselves in these critical times. And there are many oft-repeated verses that we hear. We need to start analyzing some of the things that we read in Salat, some of the things that we hear read around us. Take the gems of wisdom and apply these gems to your lives. We in South Africa, in the Southern Hemisphere, we have had to recently apply this Quran. We had to reanalyze our position as Muslims. A great trauma struck the land. A great evil went across the whole of the southern region. And it made people look into themselves to try to understand where we are coming from. It reached the point of people killing other people. They call it xenophobia, which is the fear of strange things, the fear of foreigners. And as Muslims, we went back to our sources and we realized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the oft-repeated verses, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا والنساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. We repeat this very often. But what does it really mean? Allah tells us, O humanity, Ya ayyuhan nas, fear Allah, reverence your Lord, who has created you from one single entity. From one entity, the DNA of one human being. All of you are created from. And then it continues, and it said, وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا. And from that entity came its mate, Adam's wife, Hawa. And from the two of them, men and women, countless numbers of men and women were scattered all throughout the earth. So fear Allah, reverence your Lord, from whom you ask your rights, and have respect and reverence for the wombs that bore you. Verily Allah is ever watching over you, and He has knowledge over all things. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in this verse that the creation of Bani Adam, Khalq Bani Adam, where did it come from? Min nafsin wahida. It came from one entity. And that entity now developed, split into two, and then from the two, male and female, people spread. Spreading more than likely from the southern regions in Africa, spreading out to different parts of the planet, and so people began to populate different continents. And we changed. Our skin color slightly changed. Our features changed over the years. The environments that we were living in. Great civilizations came up. Civilizations in Africa, civilizations in the Middle East, in Asia, India, China, and finally in Europe. People organized themselves, organized their technology, to the point where they are able to develop large cities, as we see today, mass communications, systems of transport. You can transport from one part of the planet to another. You have technology in your hand. that 20, 30 years ago was only privy to only a few people had this technology. Now it is widespread. You communicate like you want. But even though the technology has become great, the morality has decreased. That people now, there is more people killing each other, hating each other, stealing from each other, abusing each other than at any point in history. And so how this dichotomy comes about, we know that in Europe took over. They began to spread a type of religion that had no respect for the real creator of the heavens and the earth. More respect was paid for a person based on the color of the skin, or based on the money that you have, or the clothing that you have, your material things. Also, no respect was given to the earth. And instead of planting crops according to the environment, that is how people used to plant their crops. They would rotate their crops, and the soil would enrich itself. They planted cash crops. And by doing this, they destroyed the economy of the countries. And so people were forced to come into the large cities. And now we see in many parts of the world, we see this xenophobia which is spreading. The fear of foreign people, of different people. And it is not something which is particular to Africa. Some of the worst forms of xenophobia we will find today in Japan, in China, and of course what happened in Yugoslavia, the former Yugoslavia, wal-iyadhu billah, when the people, the Bosnian, Croat, Serbian people living together in a cosmopolitan city, suddenly the Serbians and Croats were killing the Bosnians as though they were their hated enemies. So demonization, when fear is put into the hearts and the minds of people, and they lose their touch with the Creator, they are capable of doing anything. When more immorality comes, when you expose your body, when you love to see people in a naked position, when you love immorality, your hero becomes a gangster or a thief. When you lose your haya, the Prophet ﷺ said, al-haya min al-iman, that shame and modesty is part of faith. But then he said, إِذَا لَمْ تَسْتَحِي فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. If you don't have haya, if you don't have any morality and shame, then you will do anything. You are capable of doing anything. So, Sadaqa Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, it came to pass. This hatred, but change, we cried for change. And we realized that Allah said He will not change the condition of a people until they change that which is in themselves. So let us go back to the beginning. Let us go back to the beginning of time with one of the great Imams of Islam, Imam Malik ibn Anas rahimahullah. And the great Imam of Dar al-Hijrah of Medina, he is reported to have said, Awwal al-ma'asi al-kibar wal-hasad wal-shuh. He said the first of the sins was pride and jealousy and greed. Think of these three elements. We want to change ourselves. We want to look inside of ourselves. The Imam said the first of the sins, it is pride. How did this come about? And then he said, rahimahullah, hasada iblis wa takabbar. فقال خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. The Imam that said, the Iblis, the Shaitan, wal-iyadhu billah, in the beginning of time, when Adam was created, and when he was asked to bow down, and he saw that Adam knew the name of everything, Adam had great wisdom, hasada Iblis, he became jealous, al-hasad. And then he became arrogant. And he said, you created me from fire, and you created him from clay. So he was the first racist. He was the first person that looked at the makeup of another individual and said, I'm better than him. because I'm created from another substance. And so he became proud and arrogant. Then, when Adam alayhi salam, Hawa is now created, now the Imam continues. فقال تعالى فكلا من حيث شئتما ولا تقربا هذه الشجرة فشح آدم حتى أكل منها. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Adam and Hawa, so eat from wherever you please, but do not approach the tree. Don't come near the tree. And Adam got greedy and he ate from the tree. And so the three first major sins and mistakes, hasad, kibriya, pride, and shuh, greed, desires, following desires. These are three important elements. Why are we jealous of another person? We are usually jealous because of a material thing. They have a new baby. He has a new car. Jealousy is not when you want a car like his. That's okay. But if you want the car and you hate that you see Ali driving his new car, you hate it, and you put out a negative thing against him for something material, this is hasad. And the strange thing about hasad is that the person who has hasad, al-hasid, is more affected than the mahsud. So the one who has jealousy, he is more affected than the one he's jealous of. He destroys himself. He can't be satisfied and happy. But the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the danger. He spoke about the danger of this, and he said, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالْحَسَدْ فَإِنَّ الْحَسَدَ يَأْكُلْ حَسَنَاتِ كَمَا تَأْكُلُ النَّارُ الْحَطَبَ. He said, beware of jealousy. It will eat up your good deeds as a fire eats up firewood. You fast in Ramadan, you're jealous of another person, burns it up. You give sadaqah, it destroys all your good deeds. Beware of jealousy. And know that all the created things, if a person has money, that's not necessarily a blessing. You will see Muslims in different parts of the Muslim world, when they got money, they actually became destroyed. So money is not necessarily a blessing. Pride, proud of my color, proud of my language, proud of my wealth. This is the danger, another major danger. The real pride is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because no matter how beautiful you think you are, and you die, nobody's going down in that hole with you. No matter how much money you have, we come from a simple place, a humble place, and we shall return to a humble place. So why are we proud? Why are we proud with the little energy and strength that we have? Well, this can be taken away from us in the twinkling of an eye. And so number two is pride. The last one is greed, following desires. And this is something which is widespread throughout the earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us many examples. And one of the most beautiful ways the Quran teaches, it gives us examples not only from the world of people, but it gives us examples from the world of animals and insects. And we know in the Quran there are three insects in particular. We have Surah Al-Nahl, Surah Al-Naml, and Surah Al-Ankabut. We have the chapter of the bees, the ants, and the spiders. And for a long time we studied the bees. The bees have beautiful honey, so we studied the bees. The Ankabut, the spider, has its webs, and we study this. But the Naml, the ant, this is an amazing creature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this ant, in the life of the ant, in the essence of the ant, you will see much wonders. In Surah An-Naml, verses 17 and 18, when the Naml is mentioned in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal is saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. وَحُشِرَ لِسُلَيْمَانَ وَجُنُودُهُ مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ وَالطَّيْرِ فَهُمْ يُوزَعُونَ حَتَّى إِذَا أَتَوْا عَلَى وَادِ النَّمْلِ قالت نملة يا أيها النمل ادخلوا مساكنكم لا يحتمنكم سليمان وجنوده وهم لا يشعرون. The Naml is mentioned. What happened? And before Sulaiman were marshaled his hosts of jinn, men and birds, and they were all kept in order and ranks. At length, when they came to a valley of ants, one of the ants said, "O ants!" She didn't think of herself. It's feminine too. She didn't think of herself. She called to all the other ants. And she said to the ants, "Enter into your habitations, your houses." She said to the ants, "Enter into your habitations, your houses, lest Sulaiman and his army would crush you and they don't know." When they study the ants, they realize the ant is the most successful of all of the creatures on earth. Right now, for every human being, there is about 20 million ants for every one of you. There's about 12,000 species of ants. The biomass of ants, if you put all the masses of ants together, it reaches 1/4 of the biomass of all living things. Ants live on every single continent except the South Pole itself. But what is important about the ant is that the ant is polite. The ant does not think about himself or herself. The ants think about the other ones. And so you will get a collective of ants where there is 10 million ants in a colony and they all think with one mind. Remember the Quran? Min nafsin wahida. Human beings were created from one entity. The ants were also created, but they keep their mind. They relate to all of the other ants as one. So the ant is polite. One ant can lift 50 times his weight. It's like one of you lifting up a Mack truck. But because he has this strength, what does he do? Does he use the strength against the other ants? No. They will live and they will die for each other. And when a study was done of the ants, Argentinian ants, they blocked the rows of the ants, and every time it got difficult, the more difficult it got, is the more polite the ants got with each other. The more polite they were. And so, the ants, the essence of the ant is character. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Bu'ithtu li'utammima makarim al-akhlaq." I have been sent in order to complete the best in character. The ant, the more difficult you make it for the ant, is the more polite and more cooperation they have. I looked at a row of ants. I spent 20 minutes in South Africa looking at a row of ants. Every single ant that meets another ant, he gives them salams. They give salams with their antennas, and they send a chemical message. And if there is 3 ants that is moving, and the one ant meets him, he gives salams to the Amir, and then he gives a nod to the other 2. Every single time, he will not pass an ant without giving salams. The Prophet ﷺ said the time would come when there would be amongst the Muslim a salam al-khas. There would be a special salams that they would give only to their friends and not to other Muslims. The ants also carry out the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People cry about neocons. They cry about Texas and the neocons and what they've done to North American society. Right now in Texas, it is reported, and it came to us in our paper, in 2002, there was a new type of ant who came into Texas. There was only a few hundred in 2002. Right now, there are millions of this ant. What is the strange thing about the ant? This ant only attacks electronic equipment. They are destroying all of the corporations. They have reached the NASA space installation. So the Russians have called into America and say, what is happening with our spaceships? The ants are attacking. And when they spray the poison on a row of the ants, they die, and the second row has adapted to the poison. When you are amongst the ants, there is no revolution amongst ants. Rebellion is futile. Everybody gets their rights. They are cooperative, complete ta'awun. complete cooperation with their fellow beings. They are created from one soul, one entity, min nafsin wahida. And so we need to take the example from the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more difficult it got for the ants is the more polite they are with each other. The more their economic circumstances go down, they will sacrifice their life for another ant. This is an example for human beings. Believe that they are the highest of creation. But we can go to the highest level, or we can go to the lowest level of asfal as-safilin. Wal iyadu billah. May Allah protect us from greed, from pride, and from hasad, from envy and jealousy. May Allah protect us from this, and may Allah unite us and give us the example from the world of the insects, and accept our prayers and dua, and have mercy on all those who have fallen under xenophobia and hatred and fear. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. Come forward. Alhamdulillah al-Wahid al-Ahad al-Fard al-Samad alladhi lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Wa usalli wa usallam ala khatam al-anbiya'i wa mursaleen Muhammad ibn Abdullah wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah Azza wa Jal for the life that He has given to us. And we ask Allah to accept us and to make us of those who will live and die in the example of the last and greatest prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah alayhi after salatu wasalam. And we know that Allah has given us guidance, and He has said to us in His glorious book, mukhbiran wa amira, inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم على عبدك ورسولك محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين وارض الله عن الخلفاء الراشدين أبو بكر عمر عثمان وعلي وعنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وذل الشرك والمشركين ودمر أعداء الدين وانصر عبادك يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر المجاهدين في كل مكان وخصوصا في بيت المقدس في فلسطين يا أرحم الراحمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا دينا إلا قضيته ولا مريدا إلا شفيته ولا ميتا إلا رحمته ولا حاجة من هوائج الدنيا إلا قضيتها يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين. عباد الله يرحمكم الله. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. قم الصلاة.